Hello, and welcome to another essential teaching of this new movement. Just imagine, what if everything we think we know about the major religions is only a part of the truth, or worse, a deliberately altered truth? That's the exciting, and yes, pretty controversial idea we're diving into today. It's about the search for something that has supposedly been lost, an original, pure truth. So, let's start with the most provocative question of all. What if all religions are lying, just like that? That's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? One that would completely turn everything you've ever learned on its head. But hold on, the theory we're looking at today is a bit more subtle. It doesn't just say they're all lies. No, the real question is much more fascinating. What if all these religions aren't lying, but are just telling a corrupted, twisted version that emerged from an originally single, true story? And right there, at that exact point, is where things get really interesting. First point, the radical premise. The whole thought is based on an idea that's a bit reminiscent of the ancient Gnostics, This search for a hidden, true knowledge. The basic assumption is that there was once a single, universal truth, and it was the basis for all religions. But this truth has been lost to us. And the crazy thing is, the starting point is actually totally positive. The core idea is, hey, whether we're looking at Christianity, Islam, or Buddhism, you name it, deep down they are all based on the same, pure, original truth. There's a common source, so to speak, from which everything evolved, and this is where we see the core of the whole drama. On the left, this idea of the pure, clear, universal truth, all good, but on the right, the claim that this exact truth was systematically distorted, twisted, corrupted, manipulated. And it went on for so long that the original thing was barely recognizable. Now, of course, you have to wonder, how could it be that all traditions were affected? That's a pretty bold claim. Well, the answer given here is that there is someone or something working behind a veil, the negative force. And what is this negative force supposed to be? Importantly, it's not just evil in general. No, it's described as a very specific, omnipresent force or entity, and it pursues a very particular, perfidious strategy. To focus on spiritual truths and to deliberately twist and distort them. How is this done? By spirits working through us, taking influence on our minds. But how can we know this is the truth? How would we prove that? Indeed, there are many hints in that direction. The closer we look on scriptures and testimonies and how they came into existence, how they evolved from older claims and stories, or how differences came with translations and interpretations, the more it gets clear that we don't deal with pure specific truths. The closer we look for differences and contradictions, the more we think about them, the more it gets clear that we don't deal with unambiguous truths. And when we search for what all those teachings have in common, we see that there must be a common core behind all of it. The proof is in front of us. When we take a huge step back and consider all religions, scriptures, doctrines, and teachings as parts of a huge picture, they all originate from, which is the picture of truth. But such an approach is the opposite of how things are normally done. Normally, we tend to narrow our gaze, get closer and closer into a specific field and diving, getting lost and splitted in details. People tend to assume their own attitudes to be the authentic ones and therefore reject anything else. But that is not how such an original picture could be reconstructed. Indeed, you will rarely find such like efforts. Separation is the rule. As long as we do not search for it, we have no chance to find it. And logically, as long as one does not question the own attitudes, how could it be possible to find the false in it? So, we come to a fundamental doubt. It's about the question, isn't this whole thing just a new dogma? And the answer is quite unexpected. It's about the built-in fallibility of the movement itself. And this is really the point that distinguishes this movement from so many others. The core message is, we ourselves are not infallible. Our teaching is not the final word, set in stone. On the contrary, they say quite openly that as a movement, they must constantly re-examine themselves and cleanse themselves of their own errors. So this is a very conscious break with the classic image of the guru. You know the one. The infallible master who possesses and proclaims the absolute truth. Instead, the founder positions himself very differently here, as a humble seeker. Someone who can make mistakes himself, who is still evolving, and who is even willing to constantly question his own insights. And that leads us to the one big question at the end. Can something like this even work? Can a belief system that constantly doubts itself survive? Is this built-in fallibility its greatest strength in the end? Or does it inevitably lead to the whole thing dissolving? An exciting question that you'll have to answer for yourself. Thanks for being here.